Good afternoon, everyone. I can hear myself loud and clear, so hopefully you can as well. Welcome to this session on building and deploying a mobile app with a Heroku backend in 40 minutes, or your money back. So hopefully you'll pay that massive fee as you came in. If you didn't, did you not pay the fee as you came in? No? All right. My name is Paul Batterson. I am a Salesforce MVP. I'm the COO at Cloud Galacticos. If you love this session enough that you think I want to hear more of what this guy's got to say, you can follow me on Twitter at @pbatterson, and I also have a video series on YouTube. If you go to @CloudBytesTV on Twitter, though, you can see the videos being posted up there and follow for more. So we are moving. So this session about building a mobile app and with a Heroku backend. I run a developer group over in the UK, and the other week, we had someone from Salesforce there, one of the master SEs, presenting, and they were talking about Heroku and how wonderful it was and how easy it is to get set up. And there were a few questions in the room about, well, is it really that easy? And it seemed to be one of these things that, hands up here who's actually built a Heroku app. Good portion. Hands up here who's built a Heroku app and a mobile app with it. Couple? Okay. So you'll have to excuse me as well, I have Dreamforce throat. For those that have been to Dreamforce more than once, by day 2, you lose your voice. By the end of the week, if you can still speak, you've not done Dreamforce properly. So the session today is really to cover off how you can do it. And there's a recorded demo we're going to go through because I'm unable to type and talk at the same time. I can't multitask, I'm terrible at it, so we won't bother doing it. But I want to just show how easy it is to do that. And it's going to be a simple app we're going to build, but let's just start off by talking about the different options we have when we're building mobile apps. So very first option we have is the Salesforce app, Salesforce 1 as it used to be known. Everyone here knows how we can drag up components, point and click, build an app, deploy it on mobile very rapidly. That's fantastic for business apps. So if you're building an internal app for your sales team, for your marketing team, for anyone that you're using internally, that looks good, works well, nice and easy. It's not super friendly for anyone who doesn't work with Salesforce regularly. It's not as intuitive as it could be. It's not branded. And so there's the second option, which is My Salesforce. So assuming everyone here has heard of My Salesforce. If not, go and find out from the team, I think, downstairs, and they'll talk you through it. But you can build branded mobile apps. But again, I don't know if any of you are able to spot here, this looks remarkably similar to this. It's still, it's branded, but it's not highly custom. You can do a lot of things on it, but it's still not really kind of, what I'm going to call consumer ready. So it's good for partners, those external use cases. But the third option we have is to custom write a mobile app using Swift or Kotlin or Java or React Native or insert framework here. And that works really well because we can do whatever we like with it. If we have custom logic, custom code, we can do that. But it does require a developer. So hands up in the room who classes themselves as a developer or technical person. Okay, and on the flip side, who would consider themselves a functional person? Welcome. This is friendly for you as well, but as we see, developers are fairly scarce resources. It takes time, it takes effort to do these things. So we're going to talk about the third option today, which is building that custom app and having a Heroku backend on it. There's a number of reasons we want to do this. Number one is scale. Heroku is fantastic for scaling. If you've never done a demo to a customer where you show how easily Heroku can scale, you should just practice around with it and do it. I once did a demo where we scaled up to 100,000 concurrent users hitting their API, and we just sat there and watched Heroku do it, and it was fantastic. It blew people's minds. Second reason is we have that customizability. So we can start to have custom branded apps. We can start to have custom features that we want on there. We can code. So we have a lot more control about what's going on underneath, performance, if we want to have a particular style, if we want to have particular branding. And also we can use app features as well. So if we've got something complex going on, so say we want to use ARKit, can't do that in My Salesforce. We can't do that definitely can't do that in the Salesforce app as it stands at the moment. But if we're writing it in Swift or in any other tool, we can use any of those toolkits. And if you go down to the Apple guys downstairs, for example, and ask them about all the different kits they've got, there is ML kit, AR kit, VR kit, health kit. That's just 4 I can think of off the top of my head. And they give you all of these wonderful tools that you can use on the device. So we want to be able to utilize them. So what we're going to do now is we're going to build a mobile app that calls a Heroku backend, and we're going to do that before the session ends. And for those of you that did pay a fee to come in, if we don't manage to do it, you're going to get your money back. For those that didn't pay the fee, hopefully I'll manage to do it, and so you won't have to miss out. So we're going to go through now and see a video of what we're going to do in a sec, but just to kind of talk through what we're going to build. This is going to be a simple example, okay? This is not going to be an app that I'm going to sell on the App Store and generate millions of dollars like Flappy Bird or something. This is going to be a simplistic demo, but it's designed to help you understand what we could be doing here. So what we're going to have is a mobile app that is built using React Native. So anyone here worked with React Native before? A smattering of people, okay. So React Native is a cross-platform JavaScript development framework for mobile devices. So, excuse me, so effectively you write some JavaScript code, it gets compiled by Facebook, have a very clever compiler and toolkit that helps you build out an Android app or an iOS app. So the idea is that you can reuse code across platforms. We're using it here today because it's pretty simple and easy to get going. It's fairly easy to explain. There's a barrier to entry. But more importantly, it's written in JavaScript. So everyone here, you work with the Lightning platform. Lightning components use JavaScript in the background. If you're not bought into JavaScript and learning JavaScript, you should really get on board with that. And following that, we're going to build a Node.js backend. It's going to be a very simple API, and it's going to use Heroku. We're going to deploy that on. And again, that's all JavaScript. So what's important to see here as well is that we're using the same programming language for both our backend and our front end. So it makes it much easier for us in terms of getting those development resources and helping them work with us. So let's go into the demo build. And hopefully, when I press play, it's going to play the video. There we go. So you can see here I'm in a terminal. I apologize for how small this is, but we'll zoom in when it's important stuff. I'm making a new directory here called Dreamforce 18 Heroku. This is very simple command line stuff. I'm changing into it. And then I'm initializing a new Node.js app. And I'm just accepting all the defaults because I'm accepting all the defaults. And then what we're going to do is we're going to install some dependencies. So we use npm install --save, and I'm going to include body parser, which allows us to parse bodies as we send backwards and forwards, and Express for helping us build the Express app. And you can see that this is recorded live here because you've got the loading window there. So I'm going to open this up in Visual Studio Code now. And this is where my iMovie transition is going to look wonderful, and you're all going to go, ooh, okay. So we're going to create a new file called index.js. Where's the ooh? Come on. That is a Wednesday afternoon at Dreamforce kind of ooh. But it worked. So we've got this. It's a bit easier for us to see now. So first thing we're going to do is initialize a few things. We're going to use require.js, so to bring them in, the require framework. I'm going to use Express. Express is the most popular API framework for Node. That's all it takes to get Express running in there. We're going to use body parser, which we introduced a second ago as well to help us. What I'd like to point out as well is this is actually a live recording of me typing, so you will see all my errors and flaws as well, which will help you understand why I'm not doing it live here. We're going to define a port. So for those that have used Heroku before, Heroku, when you initialize your app and get it running, will try and bind to a port. It uses process.env, which is the environment variables. So if you've got environment variables in your terminal, we'll use them. Otherwise, we're just going to tell it to use port 5000. And then we're going to instantiate our Express app. And it's pretty simple there. We're going to use the body parser. So we're going to tell it that we want to work with that. And we also want to work with JSON, because that's what we're going to return, JSON being the standard way of returning data pretty much now. And because we're working with JavaScript as well on the other side, it's going to make things easier for us. So we're going to define one route. So we're going to have a get option for Dreamforce, /Dreamforce. We've got a function, so we're taking our request and our response, which we're going to pass back. You can see I'm really slightly particular about where my spaces are, so we add the space back in. And what we're going to do is we're going to return a response with a status of 200, Who here knows their HTTP codes? That's all OK, that means. And we're going to return some JSON in there, and it's going to have a message. And that message is going to be, hello, Dreamforce. And I'll probably put a few, I put exclamation marks in there. Probably go back in a second and do that. Yep. It's very weird watching yourself type. So we close off that function. So that's our function running. And then all we're going to do is we're going to get our app to listen on that port that we defined above. And we're going to define a callback function there as well that allows us to put out to the terminal that it's running. Okay? Just going to log out to the terminal listening on port, whatever the port number is. So that is, 14 lines of code. That is our Node.js app. Pretty sure any of you feel you could write that. If you want to have the code, we'll be sharing it at the end with a GitHub repository, because typing it back up from a photo is never going to be as fun. So we zoom back out. Give me an ooh. We're getting there, people, come on. And we're going to go down into the inbuilt terminal, so you can launch a terminal from code. Anyone who didn't know to do that, it's a fantastic way of stopping yourself from having to switch back and forth all the time. And what I've done is I've just run node index.js. That launches the app. And I go to my local host. I go to port 5000. I go to /Dreamforce. And you can see it returns our JSON message up there, hello, Dreamforce. So exactly what we just typed out. Nothing revolutionary. Everyone could be able to do that. So we kill the app, and then what we're going to do is we're going to create a proc file. So Heroku requires you to have a proc file for deploying certain apps up there. It basically tells Heroku how to deal with the processes, OK? Node.js is a single-threaded application, single-threaded runtime. By creating the proc file, what you do is you just say that you want the web process to run node index.js like we did before. It just instantiates the apps. You can also have background processes called workers, and you can define how many web and worker processes you want. So if you've got a lot of stuff happening on a background process, you can do that with a number of workers. So we then create a new Git repository. We initialize it. We add everything. We find out that I added an incorrect character because, again, I'm human. And so what we do is we then decide, should we try and redo something? No, we're just going to commit it. And we just commit everything. Now, normally, obviously, everyone knows best practices is you'd have multiple commits by this point. You'd have committed everything. We'd have tests. But this is a demo. So we commit everything, and then we use Heroku create. And what that command does there is that creates a new Heroku app for us. And we get an error. And that error that pops up there is, Paul, you've used all your free Heroku apps. And so what we've skipped is 3 minutes of me swearing and going and deleting Heroku apps, which is not exciting for anyone. So we then create a new app. As you can see, it gives us an app with a particular URL. It deploys it for us, runs all the build scripts in the background, uses the build pack, and installs the modules. We've only got 2 modules, so it's pretty easy for it to do so. And then it just says it's done. And you can see we're going to go back up. We're going to copy the URL. Okay? That URL is our URL of our Heroku app. You can have custom URLs as well, so for custom domains, but we're just using the standard one. So if I enter that here, it was some exciting URL like secure Everglades. So Heroku gives some great names. And you can see here that that has come up with our message again. So our app is deployed on Heroku and running. So we've now got a live app on Heroku. So we've got the Heroku bit built out. That wasn't too difficult. Anyone think that that was too hard? No? Cool. So let's clear our screen, and we're going to use React Native's create React app, or create React Native app, and that's going to initialize a new a new mobile app for us. So I'm going to call it DF18 mobile, and I want to install everything globally, and this is going to take a little bit of time to run. And what this is doing is it's going away and installing all the dependencies. So while this is doing that, I just want to kind of take a step back. So the deploying of that app there, it's pretty simple, OK? That API is not going to be an API that changes the world. But because it's on Heroku, we could start using a database in the background with Postgres. We could start using Heroku Connect to connect our Salesforce instance to a Postgres database and start to get the data there. And then we could make that data accessible via the API. Or we could have post methods, patch methods. We could really start to build out a fully fleshed application rather than just the demoware. But notice how simple it was to get that running. In terms of showing this as a demo to a customer, have a proper message and then a proper response body, not hello Dreamforce, but it's pretty easy for us to work with. So our app's set up. We again open it in Visual Studio Code. Is everyone ready for another transition? So we get our app.js open here, and our app.js is going to be all the information we're going to need. So we're going to add a bit to this. Now, React has a few interesting features around it. There's a rendering lifecycle, okay? I'd say go and read up on it, but effectively, React is all about having components that are built for a mobile application, and components mount on the screen and unmount on the screen, okay, as they enter and leave the view. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a new constructor for our component, and that's going to pass in props, which are properties, effectively, okay? That's the properties of the component. We're just going to call the super method, so its parent constructor to do that, and we're going to set some state. So this.state defines the state for our component, and we're going to tell it that there is an isLoading property, which is true, okay? Simple JSON method, JSON object for the state there. We're then also going to use the component did mount method, okay? And we're going to do this so that when the component loads up on the screen, when it's ready to render, we're going to go away in the background, and we're going to use fetch. So fetch is just a simple library for doing HTTP requests, and we're going to fetch that URL. So that URL is our URL. Fetch by default does GET requests, so it's nice and simple for us to use. And what we're going to do is when that comes back, we're going to have a promise. Everyone familiar with promises? Cool, okay, a few nods. So promises are like callbacks, but avoid you having massive sets of nested brackets and allow you to do await and things like that. So when that comes back from our request, we're going to take the response out of it. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that JSON, and we're going to just put it out. And we're going to go and set some state in a second. So we're going to take our response JSON that we've got. So we take our response, we put it into a JSON format, and then from that JSON format, we're going to use this.setState, which is going to set our component state again. And the first thing we're going to say is that we are no longer loading, because obviously we've loaded the data. And so that's going to be false. And then we're also going to say that our message is now going to be the message that we've received back. Okay. So again, this is just very simple JavaScript, nothing too difficult here for us to run with. So we've got that. The final couple of things we need to do. First of all, let's go to our return method. Our return method returns the JSON, or sorry, the JavaScript and the HTML they're going to be put out on the screen for us. So this is actually something called, it's a tweaked version of a HTML-like language for it, but for our simple explanation today, we'll say it's basically HTML. And what that's going to return for us, so we're going to catch an error because I'm actually doing some good practice. So if there is an error with a callback or an error with a call out, we're just going to console.log that, I believe. It's amazing that I can talk faster than I can type. So we're going to log that out to the console, but then we're going to go to this return method. And the return method, as I say, is what's returned that actually draws out our component on the screen. And if you've ever done any work with AngularJS or React.js as well on the web, they use a similar sort of setup. And what we want to do is we want to introduce a bit of logic here. That's first we're going to say, well, if it's loading, we just want to display the activity loader, the loading indicator. And I'm pretty sure we're not going to get to see that because I was doing this on a 100 megabit connection, and so calling out to that API was fairly snappy. But we want to make sure that we can render it if needs be. And so what we're going to return is just our activity indicator, and that is going to be wrapped within a view for us, okay? Nice and simple view that we can use. Basic setup, nothing overly complicated. So that's what's going to come out if it does happen. If it doesn't happen, we're just going to render our normal view with our text, which is down here. And we're going to put some logic in there in a second. I'm just styling this just to make it nice and easy to see in the center. And also, it's nice and easy to do styling with React as well. So what we're doing here is we're building up this app. Just going to have a bit of a loading indicator. When it's ready to run, we're then going to be able to draw it. In a minute, we're then going to switch over and start to run this application by running Expo, which is kind of the packager for it in the simple way of describing it. And what Expo is going to do is it's going to take that JavaScript, it's going to bundle it up and translate it into code for iOS and code for Android, and just run it locally on there. So what you can see we've done here is we've just output our data message within a text, and then at the top here, we're going to go in and we're going to add our activity indicator and our requirements. Otherwise, it's going to error for us, and we're just going to get a big, horrible red screen. So that's all good. And we're going to go down to the terminal, and we're just going to run that. So npm start, which runs the start method that's defined within our node package.json. And so this is our bundler. Okay? And you can see I'm going to click Run iOS Simulator. It's going to launch up the simulator. It's going to install all of the stuff that it needs to do. It's using a nice iPhone XS Max, because why not? So it opens up the project, and then we just say we've got it, we're going to start. And you can see it's returning our message, hello Dreamforce. And I'm going to refresh it a few times. You might see it re-render quickly. There we go, yep. So all what that's doing is that's refreshing, it's going away, it's pulling the latest, it's going up to the server, calling that API and returning the data. Okay? Nice and simple. So we've just built a mobile app with a Heroku backend in, I think it's about 13 minutes that's taken, which is pretty impressive, right? Not too shabby. So what we've done is by no means like the greatest feat of engineering in the world, let's be clear. But let's talk about what we could be doing. So we've had some success. So let's talk about what comes next and what we can do to expand on this. So one of the reasons that I wanted to show this is that I found it, excuse me, I found that people separate off Heroku from the rest of the Salesforce platform when they're thinking about how they demo. So when you go in to a client, so who here is a consultant? Like works as a consulting partner, ISVs and customers. We've got any customers in here? There's a few customers, cool. So for consulting partners, when you're going in and you're going in and demoing to someone, in particular consulting partners, someone gives you some requirements, you'll go away, you'll build a bit of a proof of concept to show them that you understand what's going on. And people are really good at doing that with the standard platform. And it's the same for if you're a customer, when you're going in and some of your business team are asking if they can do a certain thing. You go into a sandbox, you knock together a few objects, you can show it on screen roughly, is this what you think it works like? It's pretty simple. No one does that with Heroku. And Heroku is just as easy to use as everything else. And I just want to make it clear that what you can do if you are having someone who's talking to you about a mobile app or about an API or about a scaling solution, a website that scales up to millions and millions of users, you can knock something together on Heroku very quickly as a proof of concept to demo. And so the sort of things that we could take this to extend it out on are, first of all, we can go and add Heroku Connect in here. So anybody here used Heroku Connect? Okay, just a few people. Everyone familiar with what Heroku Connect is? Say a few people yes, a few no. So Heroku Connect is one of the elements that you can add on within a Heroku application that allows you to synchronize data from Salesforce back into Heroku to store on a Postgres database. And then if you update it in Postgres, it then syncs back to Salesforce. Now, a good question that many people will ask is, why would I want to do that? So going back to that idea of scale that we had earlier on. Say you've got a website, so say you're Macy's, okay? Macy's on Thanksgiving will have a large number of people going and visiting their website to make orders, okay? In fact, I was once told that the busiest day of the year for Heroku is Thanksgiving weekend, which is the quietest weekend of the year for Salesforce as the standard platform in terms of API requests. So imagine you're Macy's, everyone's coming, everyone's visiting your website, everyone's trying to buy new stuff. And you want some of that data to either come from CRM because you want to know if they've got client records or accounts, or contacts, and you also want to send some of that information back to see what they've purchased, so you can store that in there. Well, if you're doing that using API requests, you're going to hit the limit very, very quickly. There's a limit as to how many requests you want to be able to make. It's also adds some slowdown in there, because every time you're making a hop via an API, if that API takes, say 100 milliseconds to do that, well, add all those 100 milliseconds up, and suddenly the app doesn't, and the website doesn't feel as responsive. So what Heroku Connect allows you to do is copy that data into a Postgres database where your Heroku app can access it natively, like it was just a regular web application, and then return that data. So for us, with our mobile app, if we had a mobile app that was for consumers where we expected millions of people to be using it, so again, Macy's, when they're getting that data, we will have some of the data coming from Salesforce that we want to view, but we want our API to return that nice and quickly, so we want it on Postgres. But the nice thing about it as well is that you can use other Postgres databases alongside it. So if you've got some data that doesn't live in Salesforce and lives just on a Heroku app in a Postgres database, they can play together nicely. So that's one thing we could do. We could use Heroku Connect, we could have our data come across, and we could return that data. We could add in something like Salesforce Identity to help us log in, log out, manage users, or we could roll a different identity solution if we want to. We could do social sign-on or whatever we want to do, but we can manage all of that within our Node.js app. We could add in Kafka. So Kafka's for large data sets and streaming data and messaging. And it's an incredibly powerful tool that we can use so that if we've got a distributed workload and we're doing lots of clever stuff, so say we're running our own machine learning algorithms, we could be using that to help us with that. We can add in Redis, which is a key value store. Okay, can be used as a cache as well. So if we want to improve the performance, we can use that. We can add in, as I mentioned, our own Postgres database. So if we've got our own data, there's nothing to do with CRM because we don't always want to store everything on the platform. We can have our own Postgres database there and manage it. Add in tools like New Relic as well. So who here's heard of New Relic or used New Relic? Super. So we can use that, we can add that in, and we can see monitoring, application logs, all of these things. And we can also do clever things like use something like MongoLab. And MongoLab is a MongoDB provider. So if you have a Mongo backend, if you want to do some clever document storage, want to do some clever analytics with graph data effectively, you could also do something like a GraphDB database here. All of that can be attached onto your Heroku application and then summoned up to your mobile users. And so, the kind of opportunities here are endless. It's not difficult for us to come up with some very, very clever and magnificent apps. If we wanted to here on our device, we could start to use some of those tools like MLKit or ARKit. I saw a really good demo that one of the Salesforce team did for, he just had a baby. And as any new father, he was learning how to fill up a bottle, which is a far more complicated process than I ever envisioned it would be. And he was telling me he had a little app that he built as a demo where he could look at the bottle using ARKit, and it would tell him what temperature to fill it up to, how far to fill it up. He could record into Heroku what feed it was going to be. So if he was feeding the baby at like midnight, then he wasn't to give the baby the same as if he was feeding them at 9 a.m. or whatever. And that's a really powerful thing that he can do there, and he can feed some of that data back in, and he could go into things like Health Cloud and pieces like that. But not all of that wants to live on the platform. So again, possibilities here are endless for us. So I hope that this has given you like an overview of what's possible really and made you kind of see that if you want to build out something that does use these pieces, it's really nice and easy. As I mentioned, when I was at that developer group and there were a few people questioning that it was actually possible, well, I'm one of these stubborn people that I like a challenge. And so I think that was pretty painless and easy for us. But for those who are consultants or those that are kind of thinking of how they can show people the power of Heroku, do something like that. It's really quick and easy for you to get that set up, really quick and easy for you to work with it, and you can then scale it out to millions of users very rapidly and show the power of the platform. If you want the code, all the code for both the mobile app, so just the app.js for the mobile app, because it is like 100 meg install for the React package, but you can copy across the app code, is there, as well as all the Heroku code, all, 14 lines of it? So that's in there as well. Again, if you want to have any questions for me, I'll be around afterwards, but you can tweet me. And again, if you want to follow up any of the videos, we've got some on the Lightning component framework and other pieces. You can find them there as well. So thank you very much. I hope you found this enjoyable.